Hi, this is Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this morning, we're going to be doing another reassembly video here on this Mitchell model here. So this is the Mitchell Long Shot 650, first generation of this series reel. Kind of a rare model, not many of these out there. I just recently did a disassembly video, so as you can see, we've got all these pieces taken apart here. This is a reel that I actually acquired for free due to the fact that it had it was missing its line roller, and so it was kind of deemed useless. And I was actually lucky enough to be able to obtain a couple of line rollers for this make and model. So I was happy that that worked out, because this is actually a nice little reel. So, but one thing that you're seeing here, this drag stack, you can see that there's quite a bit of rust damage on some of these washers here, which is most unfortunate due to the fact that the rest of the reel's in great shape, you know. So we're actually going to start with that right now, and we're just going to kind of go through these washers here a little bit, take our time, take some 4-0 steel wool, and then also we're going to do a little bit of penetrating fluid on this here. I'm doing this down here at the bottom here, so I got a really nice flat surface here on the bench. But we really want to work out this rust any way that we can. And I would love to just replace these washers. Unfortunately, I don't have any on hand right now, and I'm going to have to do some research on seeing what substitutes are out there, basically. But yeah, this rust is pretty rough on here, so we're just going to do the best we can. But outside of that, you know, this reel's in pretty decent usable shape outside of these washers and that line roller. So we're gonna do what we can to revive this the best that we can. You know, you can see there's still some rust and some pitting on there. It's not so great, you know, but we're gonna do what we can. You know, this washer's in really, really rough shape here, unfortunately. So and, you know, some people might say, well, you know, why go through all the trouble, you know, with this? Well, because, you know, the stuff is still usable. Just because it doesn't look great doesn't mean it's not usable necessarily. Yeah, this isn't going to be a super smooth drag set necessarily, but with a little bit of use, it will break up over time. You can see that the steel wool is just kind of working its way in. You know, it's still not great, you know, but it is breaking it free a little bit, which is what we want. A little bit more penetrating oil. Put that in there. Let it work its way in. Okay. So yeah, not ideal, not great, but you know, we're just going for the best that we can get it for right now, so that this reel can be used again. Because this is actually a great size reel. You know, this is kind of one of those intermediate sized reels where, you know, you could take it to lakes and do some shore fishing for trout or bass. You could take it to a river and do some striper fishing with it. You could take it off of a pier, fish for some surf perch or something like that. You know, there's lots of things that you can do with a reel this size, so it's actually pretty nice. Okay. Got this hard washer here. It goes at the bottom. Okay. Well, that's as good as that's going to get for the time being, but that's a good start at least. But we'll continue the search, you know, for better washers down the road. But in the meantime, you know, we're going to get the rest of these pieces and parts cleaned up here, and we're going to get this reel back out fishing again, hopefully soon. So, you know, we've kind of done, our preliminary work here, basically, the inside of this reel is actually in very, very clean shape, which is helpful because then it just makes the reassembly that much easier. There's just not a lot of cleanup to do here outside of a little bit of old grease, but it's quite clean. And then we've got our pieces and parts here. We're going to take some 4-0 steel wool here to the shaft, of course. Looks like the shaft has been damaged and munged up a little bit here. There's some scarring here, which is unfortunate. Somebody was really rough with it at one point. Have that, and we've got our pinion gear. I'm just going to take a toothbrush here to these gears and clean them up the best that we can. Yeah, all around, very clean. So it makes it very, very helpful. Easier and quicker. You don't spend a bunch of time cleaning out all these pieces and parts here. Got a bushing here on this side. You just want to make sure that, it's clear of any gunk or debris or anything like that. There's also a spacer washer down there. It all looks like it's in good shape, though. We've got our crosswind gear and block. Bearing, of course. Put these off to the side for right now. So, we're just going to go back in reverse order of how things came out. I did recently post a disassembly video on this here, so you can check that out on the YouTube channel. And I'm actually going to be doing a small series of some other videos on some more of these long shots, and also some similar Mitchell models that are very similar in design to these. And I recently just did a comparison video with the long shots and the Riptides, Mitchell Riptides, very similar in design. So you can check all that out as well on the channel. Okay. So I'm going to put that back into position there. Now we've got our bearing here. And the bearing, we're just going to drop some oil. A little bead of Real X here. And we're going to put that back on like that. Okay. We're also going to do a little bead of Real X oil right here on the anti-reverse lever there. Okay. And then we've got 3 screws that need to go back in position. It's these guys here. But yeah, when I bought the reel, I was under the impression everything was okay with it until I couldn't help but notice that the line roller was missing. And I guess the gentleman that I got it from, he was unaware of that too, and ended up getting the reel for free as a result, because without the line roller it's pretty much deemed useless. And I was able to go back on eBay and find a source for that particular part, which happened to come from France, which is interesting because this reel's made in Korea. This was long after Mitchell was done making their reels in Europe. But I'm happy I was able to find it, because I'm actually hoping to take this reel fishing someday myself. And some reels that I work on, I end up keeping them after I get them all fixed up. And then some I end up selling off or, giving away to somebody, that wants to do some fishing or something like that. People that I know of that like to do, the kind of fishing that I do, at least. So, all right, so we've got our usual pieces and parts here. We've got crosswind block and gear here. We're just going to clean off those teeth here real quick. We're going to take some Pim Precision Blue grease. That's the real grease that I like to use. It's affordable, it works well, it's reliable. So I'm just going to get that on the gears just a little bit. Get that down in there, and then we've got our crosswind block. Just want to make sure that you clean out that slot underneath. Take a little bit of blue grease to that. Like so. Okay, and then we've got our shaft here, and it actually almost appears like this shaft is slightly out of alignment. So what I'm probably going to do is just go off camera real quick and try to bend it back into position so it's a little bit more straight up. Okay, so I think that's a little straighter now, a little better. You don't want a bent main shaft, otherwise that's going to do all kinds of problems for you, and you don't want that. So do a little bit of blue grease here on the shaft. Don't need to overdo it, just enough. And we're going to slide that back down into position. We're going to line up our holes with that crosswind block. I like to hit this thread here with just a little bead of oil, usually. I just find it's a good measure to take. As you can see, these screws can jump on you a lot real easily. Okay. And one thing that's important to note with this model, I mentioned this in the disassembly video, is the side plate needs to go back on before the rotor. On other spinning reels, it's the reverse, where you put the rotor back on before the side plate. But in this case, this has to go on before the rotor, so just make a note of that. Okay. So we're going to put our star wheel spacer washer back in position here. Like that. And then we got our main gear. Okay, so we've cleaned up our main gear. Okay. It's pretty clean to begin with here, I'd say. Clean out the inside. The Q-tip. Bushing on the outside. Okay, we want to take that blue grease here. Note that this has the wire that sticks out that needs to go inside that slot. Okay, and unfortunately they did not do us the courtesy this time of giving us an inspection hole in this main gear. You find with a lot of Abu Garcia reels, or at least the ones that I've worked on, they have that inspection hole when they have that little wire. Okay, but we're just going to have to eyeball it the best that we can and make sure that we get it in the right position. Okay. So you just make note of where the wire is sticking out. Right there. Okay. And then we're going to gently put this back into position here. like that. Okay. And we're just going to do a little bit of blue grease here around this bushing as well, on the shaft there. Doesn't need to be much. Okay. Inspect the inside of your plate, make sure it's all cleaned up. In this case, it's very clean, which is nice and helpful. So, okay, put that back on. A little snap right there is always good. And we've got our 4 screws that we're going to put back in one by one. Yeah, I would say that this particular reel is kind of the equivalent of maybe like a Mitchell 400 or maybe a Mitchell 410. I'd say it's similar to the 300 size, but it just seems like it's just slightly bigger and a little higher gear speed ratio, perhaps. Maybe a little more line capacity, but overall, that's essentially what this reel seems to be, is just a little more modernized version of that kind of reel, more or less. Okay. So now we're going to get into our rotor here, and then make note that you've got a nut, you've got a reverse threaded nut, and then you've also got this kind of nylon plastic washer that rests underneath it. Okay, but what we want to do here is we want to get to our line roller. And I do have a separate video that you can also check out on the YouTube channel about line roller maintenance and whatnot. And one thing to note is that in many cases, especially with modern day reels, modern day spinning reels anyway, the line roller typically will turn. However, I find that with some of these older models, so you can see there's the new line roller right there. I believe this is like a ceramic material of some kind. But I do find that with occasionally there's older models where the line roller actually does not turn. It's okay if it doesn't turn, but it needs to be, it needs to be there. You can't use the reel without it. But if it can turn, you definitely want it to turn, okay? And so like you can see that this is rolling around right now. Whether or not it stays that way once I put it back in, I don't know, okay? I try to make it so that these do turn as much as possible, but I have run into a few from time to time where they don't turn. It's okay as long as there's a nice smooth surface there. Okay, so we're just going to snug this up gently, okay, and we're going to have a look. I think this is actually one where it's not going to spin and turn. Normally the ones that do spin and turn they usually have like some kind of a ball bearing inside, or they have a bushing inside. This doesn't have either. Okay, that's why I said it may not actually spin. But I have had quite a few on occasion that do spin without the bearing or the bushing, but this just isn't one of those particular ones. But that line just needs to be able to rest on there as it turns around. Note that the old school Mitchell 300s, they didn't have any line roller whatsoever. It was just called the line guide, and it's just the bar that goes across. Okay, but that's in good shape there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of reel oil on this seam and on this seam here. Okay, let that work its way in the groove. Okay, and then we're also going to hit here with a little bit of reel X as well. Just a little bit. So that can work that lever back and forth. Okay, and we'll put this back. Got carried away with that and put that back on first. It actually goes on after the rotor. Okay. So you got your reverse threaded nut. You can see that this one, it's kind of hard to see. It's a little munged up though, so it has been taken off before by somebody. This is the first time I've worked on this reel, so I have no idea the history of it, but given the fact that the line roller was missing, kind of makes you wonder a little bit. So 13 mil wrench on this. You don't want to over tighten it, of course. I would just snug it, something like that. Okay, it's spinning nicely, so that's good. Now we'll put our star wheel back on. Our spacer washer here, like so. Okay, and then we're ready to put our drag stack back in. Okay, we've cleaned it up the best we can. All right, so we've got this hardened orange colored washer down there. Got a metal washer, and then a Teflon washer. Hex washer, another Teflon, and then just another regular washer. Okay, and then we've got a little snap ring that holds all that in place. Here, a little snap right there, that's good. Okay, we're just going to inspect under here. Everything looks really clean actually, so that's good. You know, somebody may have serviced the reel at one point and then they discovered that there was no line roller, and then they figured, you know, there's no point in using it. I am curious to know what happened with that. Put our top cap back on. Okay, and then we've got our handle. Just do a little bit of blue grease here on the handle. And then there's also a spring in here, you know, for this part of the pivoting here. And all I do here usually is I'll just do a little bit of real oil right there and just a little bit on that spring just to keep it intact. And that way that pivoting works well. And then also a little bead right here doesn't do any harm, just to keep the squeaking to a minimal. Okay, slide that back in. We'll put our screw back on. Doesn't hurt to do a little bead of real oil on that thread. And we'll spin this up. Like so. Tighten that up and we'll have a look and see how it goes. So anti-reverse is good. That's a good thing. Tighten up our drag a little bit here. Drag is working really well. That's good. Loosen that up. Make sure our bail is firing okay. And it looks like it is. So there you have it. That is the Mitchell Long Shot Model 650, all serviced up and ready to go. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please do subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification button. And we'll see you next time.